Hi, everyone. I'm Sean Owsley from NonStop Local KHQ, and our podcast, the focus of it is a frustration with finances, your bottom line, and what you're dealing with. And we have resources from experts that we talk to. And joining us for this conversation, which is really so critical and so important right now, is Cory Howard and Rosemary Wright. So good to have you guys here. We're used to seeing each other in the newsroom. Now we're around the podcast table. You both have been working on a number of different stories and doing interviews on finances specifically. We titled it Battling Broke because really it's a razor thin margin between the poverty line that people are dealing with. We've seen groceries escalate in price. We've seen gasoline come down recently. Housing prices have escalated. All of this is kind of a formula that goes into each individual budget per household and then how they manage that. Let's just start with both of you, and I'll start with you, Cory, about what you were working on and your bottom line takeaways.
Well, we got sort of assigned different generations because it certainly runs across everyone from who's just getting out of high school to everyone looking to retire. So I'm not sure why I got assigned the older ones as opposed to Rosemary.
You and me too, buddy.
So yeah, I was kind of looking at the millennials and the Gen X and sort of the financial stressors that they feel, because it's a lot different than the younger generation who's just starting out. Millennials dealing with families, kids growing up, maybe just starting to have kids. Gen X, maybe those kids are moving out. So you're looking at a bunch of different things. So I focused on stuff that I guess maybe sort of hit close to home, preparing for retirement, looking at what to do if maybe that wasn't your first thought coming out of high school or getting into college. Like,
if you're behind the curve a little bit.
Behind the curve.
Yeah.
Yesterday we talked about just the housing market in general and what that looks like for those generations who might want to be upgrading or downgrading. And then tonight, I believe it is managing debt, because as you get older, you're going to have a lot of debt, and you accumulate it when you're younger. You got to pay it off as you get older there. So the takeaways were basically it's just, if you are behind the eight, it's never too late to get started with all of that stuff. And we can get into more details on that. But the takeaway is, it may look bleak right now. You might be feeling like I'm so behind, but there are things you can do to sort of get ahead.
All right, we'll dive into those in a little bit. And Rosemary, what was your big perspective on the approach and the people you talked to, your big takeaway? Obviously, a different demographic that you were looking at and assigned.
Yeah, so I was talking to Gen Z, which spans from young adults and the end of high school, like 17-year-olds and 18-year-olds who are getting ready to manage their money for the first time on their own, but also those who are in their mid to late 20s. The cutoff is 27 years old. So there's kind of a wide range of people with different, financial things that they're dealing with. But the top ones that I identified were either already dealing with inflation or kind of a fear of what dealing with inflation was going to be like. A lot of people bringing up, I remember things being so much less expensive when I was younger, or my parents talk about how inexpensive gas used to be, and that's changed a lot. Another thing that we were talking about a lot was housing and affordability. A lot of people still living with their parents longer than they expected to, a lot of multi-generational households, or a fear of, I'm deciding where I'm going to go to college when I graduate high school, but I don't know if I can afford housing costs if I do move away. Maybe I should be looking at local colleges. And those were just some of the top two, but there were a few different things, and definitely some overlap as well. Already with managing debt, some of these adults who are getting into their mid to late 20s thinking, already my money's stretched kind of thin. Can I take on more debt with something like a mortgage? And big takeaway as well was, rather than, if you're behind the curve, go ahead and start. It was more so start today. Start today, even if you can only start with $1, go ahead and get going. And also thinking outside of the box, thinking creatively. Right now, a lot of people are dealing with unique challenges, so the solution might be a unique solution. Just because you saw your parents or grandparents handle something a certain way doesn't mean that that's how you need to go about it.
Well, you both touched on housing. I want to set that aside. We'll kind of end this podcast with that. I want to dive into the timeline, your investment strategy, how it changes based on your age. Cory, your story the other night, talked to a financial advisor about you know what? You came out of college, you were maybe not as sound strategy-wise to invest that money right out of the gate. You're kind of behind the eight ball. You're starting late. Your retirement's not where it should be. I know he gave you some great advice and some kind of strategy to approach that, if that's resonating with anybody that's listening right now.
Well, and that's the thing, is it was all very, it wasn't, this isn't complicated. It's a much more complicated topic, and we could have gone way more in depth on it. This is all very surface level stuff, but it's very easy things to do, you know. Look at your employer contributions to 401k. Always try to match that. You know, if your employer's saying we'll match 6%, then you put in 6% because it's free money. That's what he was saying. That's low hanging fruit. The other things, looking at, like Rosemary said, even if it's just $1, you put $1 a week in this week to a Roth IRA, you put $2 in next week, and you keep adding $1 to that. By the end of the year, you've saved over $1,300 into a Roth IRA, which it just keeps growing. You know, that's interest that in the long term is going to help you out. So low hanging fruit like that. There was a fine line between managing, which we'll talk about tonight, managing your debt and saving. You know, there's a balance there. You can't, it's not necessarily good to do one before the other, because while you're trying to save, your bills also need to be paid. So there's a balancing act between that. Of course, good debt and bad debt we talked about. Those high interest credit cards, you want to get those paid down first. Make sure that you're not just paying interest towards something. And then, you know, something like a home loan or a student loan, that's not necessarily bad debt, because that can be prosperous in the future. A home loan builds equity, and student loans help you get a better job, so you make more money.
You talked about setting aside $1 and then kind of raising it $1 as you go. I think for the people that are so stressed and the cracks show in their financial plan, and they really have no savings and they have no retirement, it's almost like a tidal wave of just being overwhelmed where you don't start. What you're saying and what they were told you was start now, even if it is small.
Start even if it's small. Yeah, every little bit helps now. And then I've always heard from my readings into this topic, it's good to pay yourself first. When you get your paycheck, even if it's $50, set that aside, build a savings account, build an emergency fund, start that easy investing into, say, a Roth IRA. Make sure that once you put that money in there, that it's professionally managed if you don't know what you're doing, so that it's not just sitting there, it's actually getting out into the market and building for you.
Yeah, great advice. And then for the younger generation, it's almost like we flip the script because you have time on your side. You're coming out of college, you go into that first job, and like Cory said, and that's what I have heard for years, if you say your company matches 6%, you have to put that 6% in out of the gate. You won't miss it if you never had it. And if you put that in, they match it. You're doubling your money each month. For the younger generation, what was your takeaway? What did you learn? What are the things that you want people to know?
Yes. So one thing that really stuck out to me that I heard from Ben over at 10 Financial, he's a financial advisor here, or 10 Capital, I should say, that's their name. He had told me that if you're not saving the money right now because you feel like you can't afford to, and you're hoping that one day you'll be financially prosperous and you'll have the extra room to save then. If you're not saving right now, you're not going to save then. If you're not saving right now when you only have $1 to save, you're not going to start saving magically when you have hundreds to save. If you're not building the habits now, you aren't really going to have the foundation and the building blocks of knowing how to save and how to manage those things, or even, testing out different ways that you can be saving. Are you putting money into a Roth IRA? Are you putting money into a high yield savings account? Are you putting money into whole life insurance? If you haven't dealt with any of those things because, I don't have enough to save right now, it's going to be really hard trying to learn later in life all of these different things that you should be learning right now.
So install the discipline and the plan and the formula right away.
Yes, absolutely.
And then it grows and you learn that and it strengthens over years.
Yes.
That's the takeaway?
Yes, the discipline.
What did they, for each of you, what did they say about, and I know, Cory, you touched on this, but I think I want to expand on this a little bit, is debt management. A lot of people come out with student loan debt. It's a reasonable when it comes to the interest rate based on the loan that you receive. What do they say as far as knocking down that debt, yet still set aside money?
Well, again, it's a lot easier said than done, right?
Sure.
Especially
We've been there.
Well, and just personally, my wife and I are at a point where we finally got to stop paying for childcare, which was just a huge financial burden off of us. Like, we were sort of in what Rosemary's talking about. It's like, we have to pay for childcare. We can't set anything aside. We can't. So now we're feeling a little bit more breathing room there, and it's nice to be able to say, okay, now we can maybe start thinking about doing this. As far as student loans, though, it's like, again, good debt, bad debt. That's the low interest ones are the ones you don't want to ignore,
Right.
but those need to be sort of secondary from what I was told to, those credit cards that you're getting 18 to 24%
Yeah.
interest rates on.
Yeah, if you have something that's at 7% and you have a credit card that's 13%, it's pretty obvious what to do.
Exactly.
You knock that credit
Yes.
card off, and then you can roll that money over into the student loan debt, and it exponentially goes in your favor there. And what about for you, your takeaway on that issue?
Making sure that your budget is as tight as possible, which again, easier said than done, but sometimes you start accruing monthly things that you kind of forget about. Do you have an old subscription that you're thinking about? Are you door dashing or eating out more than you might realize? So again, Ben was saying it's great to go ahead and print out your full bank statement every so often, not just for the debit card, but also for the credit cards and anything else you might be charging on, and sit down with a highlighter. And you might start to notice things where you're like, oh man, I did not realize how often I was going out to drinks. And he was saying when we're younger, we have more time on our hands, and a lot of the things we fill our time with cost money. All the times that you're hanging out with friends, are you hanging out at home? Or are you going out and having a drink? Are you going out to dinner? Are you, let's go see this movie, and then I'm going to get a drink at the movie, and I'm going to get food. Those little expenses, and you deserve to have fun. You deserve to do nice things, but can we think of a cheaper or free way to hang out with our friends, right? So going through all of your finances and making sure that you know exactly where your money is going, whether it's subscriptions, whether it's going out with friends, spending money on just random little things that really, really do add up. I see you both got your coffee here at work today. Could have stopped at Starbucks on the way.
No, free at work.
Exactly.
No, and really, that is,
Yeah.
as somebody has used that as an example to me, a number of financial advisors I've talked to. And it is, you still, every once in a while, you'll go through a drive-through.
Yeah.
When you're done and you pull out for one cup of coffee anymore, it's minimum $5, $6, can be $7 if you get a triple latte, whatever you're
Yes.
getting. This is what, 25 cents when you break it all down at home. And, people are like, well, I don't want to be that restricted. Well, that's the discipline. That's what they tell me. Doesn't mean you can't go on a Saturday morning if you're going to go for a drive, you're going to spend some time with your significant other, and you can splurge. But if you
Yes.
line item all that, it is amazing how quickly it adds up. And it's amazing how if you do this at home, 28 out of the 31 days a month, the savings are exponential and they add up.
And think of it like a subscription service. If your coffee's $5 every time you go through the drive-through, and that's honest, that really is on the lower end. That's a small coffee
Yeah.
without all the fixins.
Right.
If it's $5 and you're going 7 days a week, I drink my coffee on the weekends too. Would you pay for a $35 a week subscription right now? I wouldn't say I could afford that in this moment, especially if I'm pinching pennies and trying to manage debt and trying to save. You could have been saving $35 a week.
That's sound advice, but baristas across the region are groaning right now. But it really is. And it's your own personal lens that you look through,
Yes.
what you earn, what your saving is, what your debt ratio is. It's really a formula. I think the thing that both of you guys have highlighted is if you line item everything, and you have to be completely honest about what you spend on it, the takeaway is there are always going to be portions of that budget where you can see instantly, I can save a lot of money here that will add up month to month, year to year.
That's the discipline that you both are talking, and I still don't even have that. Like I shudder to think what it would look like if I actually went through line by line and was like, oh no,
Yeah.
and how much more I could be saving. But yeah,
My wife's a banker, Cory. I know what you're talking about.
yeah, I mostly deal with the finances in our house, so I'm sort of in tune to it. But I also know that I'm not that below the surface. I haven't dug deep into it. But something that Rosemary brought up when we were tackling this issue across these generations is something that came up in my conversation with J.D. Allen from Baird. He's a financial advisor too. The education on finances. I don't know about you. I never learned that we never learned that when I was in school. I took shop class.
Right.
It would be so beneficial to younger generations to teach them about the stock market, about saving, about investing your money now. So it's not, and you talked to, you had a perfect example of someone who's trying to do that.
Yes, I did actually. So there is a high school, Mountain View High School over in Rathdrum, Idaho, that reached out to me when they heard that I was working on this story. In Idaho, all high schools are required to have some sort of financial literacy course, but they've made sure that that law is open to interpretation. So schools can really figure out with their resources what they can do. This is a high school that has risen to the occasion, and their assistant principal said to me, I want to have an award-winning financial literacy program. I want to make sure that our high schoolers that live here are able to leave here with, real tools to make it in an adult financial world. And he was saying that he feels like, just talking to his high schoolers, our generation has the possibility to be like some of the highest earners. They're ready. They just need these tools. So I sat in on one of the classes, start to finish, a full 45 minutes, and then I got to speak with some of the high schoolers afterwards who are actually enrolled in it, and they're learning some really awesome things. They have mock money that they're working with and practicing managing multiple streams of income, investing in a large portfolio of things like diverse investments. They even take them down to a car lot where they get to go through the process of buying a car. Ugh. They get to know, right? I know. Oh, brother.
We felt that pain.
But they get to negotiate with the car salesman, kick the tires, slap the hood of the car. But before going, they have to use their mock budget and figure out how much can I afford for a car right now? How much can I afford for gas? Let me look at this gas mileage before I get down there, X, Y, and Z. So they're going through start to finish. And then they get to talk to the car salesman, and salesman tells them what they should have asked or what they could have done differently. Or
what a learning lesson, though.
Yes.
That's like, I mean, I don't know how many cars when I was young, you go out and buy, and then you drive home, you realize they got a sweet deal for me.
Should it sound like that?
That was way too sweet of a deal for them and not me, you know.
Yes.
And so that's interesting, and I'm glad they're doing that at Rathdrum, and that touches on that discipline from the start of when you launch into the adult phase of your life, when you're out of college and you move on to being in charge of your own finances and having that discipline to lock down early.
And also, if I may real quick, just you talked about the schools doing it. It can also start at home. JD was telling me a story about how, and this is probably the benefit of growing up with your dad as a financial planner, but his daughter, they would sit down every month and they would go over, okay, you made this much in your allowance. That's your money. I'm going to take it. I'm going to invest it for you, but this is what it's going to go through so that when you get older, that's there for you. And that's, I started thinking about that. I was like, well, I got 3 young boys. And what a great thing to do, because I can give them $5 a week or whatever for their allowance or if they do their chores. But yeah, and they can go out and buy a pack of Pokemon cards. But there's also you got to look long term here. And maybe it's more beneficial to do that for them. Set up something for them so they have money later.
Well, and if you divvy it up
and show them where it's going.
It's the show your work.
Yep.
Yes.
And it's like, okay, we're going to take this set aside. This is what we're going to do with it. This is a long-term investment for you. And here's $1 if you want to go get 1 pack of Pokemon cards. It's all a balance. And the thing that stands out to me is just the difference. And I think really the exclamation point from both of your reports here in November to me is the timeline. And I've been told this, and I was not one that did this. I had to play catch up as I was a little bit older, is if you start right away, the exponential amount of money that comes back to you is completely game-changing long-term when it comes to you actually walking away from the workforce for good and retiring. If you start at 20, by what you have at 30 is you're light years ahead of what you'd be if you started at even 28. It's such a game changer. Time is your friend. And if you're against the clock, Cory had some great ways to mention what to do. Just your takeaway on that.
Yes. Well, part of battling broke, it's not just battling it for yourself. We're trying to break generational curses, right? So I like what you were saying about even teaching your kids, starting with your kids, having them start saving right now. Everybody always makes the joke, oh, I should have been saving money back in 2008. That's when I should have been buying a house when I was 5 years old or whatever. Right. You know what I mean? But you can't do that, but you can try to set it up for the next generation. Trying to make sure that battling broke ends with you, if that makes sense. So,
yeah, it's when you look at your investments, you were talking there reaches a tipping point. Again, it's all the long game, and you have to be thinking long term when you're doing this, because you're going to be saying, well, I did $1 a week, I did $2 the next week, I only did $1,300. There's going to reach a tipping point where you're going to start seeing the fruits of your labor. And that has to be your focus long term. It's not just, you can't think so short-sighted on all of this. And that's the takeaway that I got. Now, if you're in the position where you're older, you're the millennial or Gen X, and you're looking to catch up, especially with the Roth IRA, they do have catch-up clauses where you can contribute a little bit more than you could if you were under the age of 50. I think 50 is the cutoff there. A little bit, I think it's like 8,000 versus 7,000. But again, every little bit helps. So you can invest a little bit more aggressively to try and play catch up. But you also want to make sure, again, unless you know what you're doing, take it to someone who does know what they're doing.
Get some guidance. Get some overview on your money.
Don't be afraid to ask for help.
You took away my next question because you touched on it that stands out to me. If you're 21 and you're investing, say, in a retirement account, and an advisor would probably tell you, you've got longevity on your side to save. You can be in a little more aggressive type situation. And just know your goal is 30, 40 years. Your goal is not 3 or 4 years. And the difference being, there's going to be huge swings, especially if you're in more of aggressive funds or somebody's helping you invest. As you get older, you can kind of move those to a little more conservative just to make sure that nest egg stays intact.
For sure.
Because your time is limited before you leave the workforce. And I think that explained to me was super beneficial early on. I want to move to housing specifically. 2 different generations. Obviously, Cory, I know you had a story that we ran this week on housing. I think it was about 65% housing ownership right now in America. And some people say, I simply can't afford it. I'm going to sign another year or 2 lease where I'm at. I'm going to pay rent and I'm going to throw my money down the drain because I can't financially figure out a way, unlock a key to get into a house.
And I think it was the Census Bureau that I think they said, 65%. But the majority of the market revolves around millennials and Gen X. It's about 52% of people who are either in a home or looking to trade up, maybe trade down depending on where they're at in their life. Affordability is certainly an issue right now, especially for the younger generation. But my findings were the millennials were more, again, it all depends on your family situation. Maybe you need a bigger house. If you're Gen X, maybe your kids are flying the coop and you need to downsize. The realtor I talked to was saying, don't be intimidated by those prices, the affordability of houses. If you're in that situation, you sort of have that, because oftentimes it can be a lot cheaper than renting. If you look at home buying classes, if you look at programs that can benefit you, if you look at the equity you have in your current home, it can be cheaper than renting. Again, this was all very surface level, all very situational. There's no silver bullet to all of this, but just getting out and talking to a realtor is something you should do if you're seriously considering. If maybe your lease is coming to an end, you want to maybe get into a house, look at the option, because it could be cheaper than you think. And as far as the market here, he says there's kind of a stagnation happening in the sense that younger generation can't afford a house. Millennials are locked into rates that we saw during the pandemic, which we'll just never see again,
right?
Or at least for a very long time. Or people are trying to wait out the current rates because they are trending down. Now, after that story aired last night, I actually got a message from a viewer who's a lender, and he's like, "Hey, I don't want to, correct you or anything, but your guy said that rates are trending down. They're not going to come down. Neither are housing prices." So I pointed him to my research because, my realtor guy said that, but I wanted to double check it. Rates are kind of forecasted. They're hoping they trend down, but it's not going to be a major drop in percentage. you're looking at, 6.5 to 5.5%, somewhere in that range, probably closer to 6. So if you're waiting for just half a percentage point, it's best just to get into it now. And then if those rates do end up dropping, if something happens down to 5-4%, you can always refinance as well. So
Yeah, it's pretty common phrase, date the rate, marry the house.
Yeah.
So you can always refinance that down there. If you find the dream home or your dream starter home,
Yeah.
whatever it is, just realize the market is going to increase in value if you own a property. Even if it is a starter home where you have to do a lot of sweat equity. I've done that. I've gotten in and painted the exterior myself and did the carpet and hardwood floors. And there are so many things you can do. And I know kitchens and bathrooms, if you get into a starter home and you do the kitchens and the bathrooms, it's instant value. That is value usually comes back to you. You don't want to do things arbitrarily that aren't going to bring back value if you eventually go to sell. And for you, what did they say? I mean, I don't know what the answer is, so I'm glad you're here. But I would think if you're 21, 22, you're not going to come out of college and say, I am buying a house right now. You have a little bit of time on your side. You can kick the can down the road. You just don't want to kick it too far.
Absolutely, yes. So I'll start with the younger Gen Zers that I talk to, and then I'll move to the older. So the younger ones who I said were finishing up high school, they're getting ready to go to college. That's where we're seeing a lot of the multi-generational homes. Again, they're talking about going to school locally so that they can stay with mom and dad or grandma and grandpa that first year, maybe all of college, just because they are not ready to have to pay for the housing and they don't have the family support to pay for it, or the family's like, you don't really need to go to college further away. So that's one that we're definitely seeing at that phase of life. I talked to a young mom. Her name was Lily. She is 25 and she has a 1.5-year-old. He's absolutely adorable. His name is Charles. And so her and her husband, they are kind of starting to look to expand. They're in a place smaller than they like to be in right now. They're married, they've got their one kid, and they're, what if they want to have more? What if they want to get a dog? All of these fun things. And right now they're still renting. And one thing that I had talked to about Ben, the financial advisor, was that we've had home prices go up 100% in the last 10 years. 55% of that was in the last 5. And a big part of that was COVID. So right now, trying to find a house if you are in your early 20s and you're ready to get into that phase of life, Ben was talking about maybe getting, thinking in a unique way. Just because your parents' generation or your grandparents' generation, you might have seen people do things a certain way, or maybe you're seeing your peers who do have children and are married or starting to get houses. You don't know what they did to get there, right? You don't know what resources they have available to them. You only know your situation, so you've got to work with your resources. And so one example that he gave, and again, this is also very surface level, please talk to a professional yourself. Don't take, my secondhand information from a professional, but was looking into maybe a duplex. Look into a duplex, rent out that second half. Look into some sort of split level where you can rent out another piece. Having roommates in a safe way might be the way that you get that house that you're looking for and you start building your equity to move on to another place. Because otherwise, right now, if you're renting and you know that you're in a city that you want to continue to live in, if you know you're wanting to settle down in Spokane, you could be renting in Spokane for years, but those are also years that you're putting money towards someone else's mortgage, and you could have been putting it towards your own. So,
yeah. I think that's the underlying exclamation point
Yes.
right there.
Yeah.
And it's really a balance. And I think my best advice that has been relayed to me over the years and hundreds of interviews, because I'm old, but I've had access to some of the best financial minds in our region. And they basically say, educate yourself, read. There are so many books. There's so many YouTube instructional videos out there. The more education you have, the calmer you'll feel, the less nervous and frustrated you'll feel. And then you can come up with a plan of action that fits your personal financial situation. A fascinating conversation to both of you. I'll just give you a bottom line takeaway if you want to share with anybody. Cory, start with you.
Just to kind of add on to the housing market thing too, from everything it's a buyer's market right now. And the reason that it's a better idea to buy now is because that competition is going to start kicking in. And I don't know if you had to experience this when you bought your house, but there's a time when you put a house up, multiple offers on that same day.
Yeah.
And we're not seeing that right now, but the Jeff Thomas, the guy I was talking with, the realtor, he says that could be coming down the line. So it's a buyer's market right now. If you are thinking, he says there's plenty of inventory within that $300,000 to $400,000 range, which is a starter home these days. But overall, just that's a great way to build wealth and equity is home ownership. Looking at other ways, saving, investing, all that stuff we talked about. I mean, it's never too late. I've gotten to a point in my life where I start looking back and saying, man, it is too late to do that.
Yeah.
But not when it comes to investing. You can always do that.
And despite your situation, despite your family's financial history, real estate can change the game for anybody. Just you have to bite off what you can actually handle, and not aim too high. A lot of people can get into trouble if you overextend yourself. Final thought from you, Rosemary?
Final thought is know all of your options. And that starts with knowing your own finances frontwards and backwards. Do the scary thing and print out all of the statements and go through them line by line.
Cory's smiling.
Right? But also knowing all of your options for taking that next step. So looking into whatever unique loans might be available to you because of your financial situation or because of your job. Different careers have different mortgage loans available to them. So making sure that you know all of your options for looking for better housing, knowing all of your options for expenses that you could cut out of your budget. Knowing all of your options, know your finances frontwards and backwards, and you can also find help. You can look for financial advisors in your area. I don't know how much a first session would be, but I know that there's also free financial services where you can work one-on-one with an advisor. So knowing your options frontwards and backwards, you might not be in the situation that you think that you're in. You might not be. Might be close to it, but you could be close to being able to take that next step in battling broke.
All right. Well, great insight to both of you. Thanks for being on the podcast and your reporting as always. And hopefully for all of you at home, if you're in a frustrating financial situation, something here stuck. Something here are going to help you move forward and get some wind at your back. For NonStop Local KHQ, I'm Sean Owsley.